Hello, everyone, and welcome to our discussions on Western political thought. As we have been discussing Karl Marx, so it's part 4 today, and let's start our discussion. Let us first understand the different feminist theory. So you can see here that 1960s and 1970s is the Marx era that feminism in academic discipline grew out of feminist movement. And feminism, if you have to define, it can be defined it like a set of movement aimed at defining, establishing, and defending equal political, economic, social rights and equal opportunities for women. Like all the feminists that have been working in the world for women's right, here also the idea was to seek gender equality, right to work for equal wages, and equal access to health and education, including political rights as well. So the issues were not limited to these only. There were cultural specific bound issues like patriarchal society, where inheritance laws and practice of widow emulation were targeted. If we have to divide it into phases, here it can be into three parts. The mid 17th century, where the initiation was taken up by male colonists, and the second is 1915 to Indian independence, when Gandhiji incorporated women's movement into Quit India movement, and independent women's organization then only began to come up. The third phase and the final is the post-independence phase, which focused on fair treatment of women at home after marriage or in the workforce and right to political parity. Since we have started with feminist theories, the first one here is liberal feminist. So these were the first to criticize confinement of women to private sphere, that women were only limited to private sphere, and they favored their entry into public sphere. They are not altogether challenging the domestic space, and similarly, they are favoring women's right in public sphere to strengthen their skills so that they can handle domestic responsibility in a proper and more defined, established, and effective ways. Like women should be educated to become better wives and mothers. So they are not altogether challenging the domestic space. They demand that space to be a breathing space only. So they are not revolutionary in nature. Rather, you can say they are reformist in nature. So a vindication of the rights of women is the first complete or concrete work, you can say, by Mary Wollstonecraft, where she argued that a democracy is not a true one unless women get right to vote and right to get education too. Next, you see radical feminists. So they see patriarchy or patriarchal system as the real oppressor of women, and they opine that there is politics even in the private realm. So Alison Jagger said, personal is political. Next is ecofeminist. So they describe movements and philosophies that link feminism with ecology, with nature. So ecofeminist relates the operation of woman to the operation of nature. Postmodern feminists claim that there isn't any fixed female identity. They are socially constructed identities and hence can be constructed or deconstructed. Marxist feminists, they argue that the origin of sexual division of labor has brought into notice the invisibility of domestic work, which makes what is considered to be a woman's work, like domestic work is a woman work, and that is becoming invisible, insignificant, and non productive. It is unrecognized work, and that's a women's work. So, their basic contention is that there is existence of economic inequality between the classes. The traditional Marxist theory that focuses on production, exploitation, and capitalism as the root cause. Since we have discussed the feminist theory, we now have a basic idea about what feminist actually stand for or feminist movement speaks about. Now come to feminist approach. So Cynthia and Enloe and Spike Peterson, these are the renowned feminists, and it suggests that international relations are competitive, power oriented, and exploitative because only domination of men in politics. There isn't any woman. So because of man domination in politics, the sphere has become competitive, power oriented, and exploitative. It further argues that international relations would have been more balanced, harmonious, and effective if women were given their due share in it. So, liberal feminists accordingly opine to create a gender equality, education, political mobilization, and pressure to change. Radical feminists they view that capitalism is the root cause of gender inequality, and this can be weeded out by socialism. However, these are criticized, and critics point out that gender inequality and domination by men cannot be the root cause of international problems. And they further point that it is the society which is to be addressed to remedy gender inequality. So, in the end of the 1980s, the feminist perspective has entered international relations, or there are many feminist theories as we have discussed. These all theories are trying to explain women's subordination in one way or the other, and they all have different reasons for women's subordinations. But the basic contention is that they are trying to explain is the women's subordination. In international relations or international relations, feminist approach uses gender as a category of analysis. Gender, that is a system of social hierarchy where masculine characteristics are more valued than the feminine one. Gender is a structure that signifies unequal power relationship between women and men. So, taking it in terms of international relations, liberal feminists investigate problems of refugee women, the income inequalities that are there between men and women, and kinds of human rights violations and incurred disproportionately by women, such as rape and trafficking in war. They look for women in institutions and practices of global politics, and they observe that how presence and absence of women affects and is affected by international policy making. So, feminist critical theory has its root in Gramscian Marxism because it explores both the ideational and material manifestation of gendered identities and gendered power in global politics. So, when we talk of feminist critical theory, Sandra Whitworth becomes an important name. Feminist constructivists they study the processes whereby ideas about gender influence global politics as well as ways that global politics shapes idea about gender. It's vice versa. You can understand it either ways that processes where ideas about gender influence global politics and the global politics shapes ideas about gender. So Elizabeth Prugel is a feminist constructivist, an important name here. Post-structuralist feminists point out that men have been generally seen as the knowers, the one that has counted for knowledge, and that has been one of the reasons which accepts men's life in public sphere because they are the knower, they are more knowledgeable. Post-colonialist feminists focus on colonial relation of domination and subordination established under European imperialism in the 18th and 19th century. Now comes the feminist definition of security. So, feminists define security broadly to include diminution of all forms of violence, whether it physical, economical, or ecological. Traditional stories about war that portrays men as the protector and women as being protected. The men who protects women. These are being challenged by today's war reality, where you see the victimized numbers are those of women and children. These are the vulnerable groups which are more victimized. War association with masculinity and presenting soldier as a hero, these are also challenged by an increasing number of women in militaries around the world. You can now see women members in militaries. So these security notions are now on a gradual transformation and change. Let us now take up the multiple choice questions. The first question for today reads, Feminist Perspective entered the international relations discipline in. So it entered the international relations discipline at the end of 1980s. There are many feminist theories, we have discussed them all, and they all are trying to explain women's subordination. However, they all have different reasons for women's subordination. The next question is, A Vindication of the Rights of Women is written by. So Mary Wollstonecraft in her book A Vindication of Rights of Women argue that democracy is not a true one unless women get right to vote and right to get education too. And early liberal feminists, they mainly demanded equal rights for women in parity with men. The next question is, Feminist Approach to IR is propounded by. So it's Cynthia Enloe and Spike Peterson who have propounded Feminist Approach to IR. They are renowned feminists, and it suggests that international relations are competitive, power oriented, and exploitative mainly because of man domination in politics. Question is, post-structuralist feminist points out men as generally, so they consider men as knower, and that what has counted as knowledge and has generally been based on men's lives in public sphere. They claim that there is a link between knowledge and power, and since men are the one who are the knower and knowledge is being associated with them, and also there is a link between knowledge and power, so ultimately power comes in the men's sphere. The next and the last question for today is, who among the following is a feminist constructivist? So Elizabeth Pugel is the right choice here. Feminist constructivists study the processes whereby ideas about gender influence global politics as well as the ways that global politics shape ideas about gender. It's vice versa.